Germany, like the economic powerhouse of Europe,
Yeah.
they're getting kind of nervous. And
Oh, really?
yeah. And you've been following this, right?
Yeah.
So in this deep dive, we're going to break down what's really going on with Poland using this podcast episode called Germany's Decline. Meet the military superpower taking over.
Okay.
It's all about Poland's crazy economic boom
Yeah.
and their growing military ambitions. So,
Wow. It's a fascinating story, especially for you listening, because it shows how fast things can change, like global power dynamics. We're talking about a country that was almost wiped off the map, for over a century,
yeah,
devastated by wars, and then stuck under Soviet control.
totally. Like, it blows my mind to think that they lost 20% of their population in World War II.
Yeah.
And just a few decades ago, they were struggling with that, dysfunctional Soviet-style economy,
Right.
where private enterprise was, basically non-existent.
Yeah.
So how did they turn things around, so dramatically?
Well, a lot of it has to do with what happened back in 1989. Poland basically ripped off the Band-Aid and quickly transitioned to a market economy.
Okay.
It was a pretty radical move. People call it shock therapy.
So, the shock therapy. For those of us who don't know much about it, what exactly did that look like in Poland?
Well, they did a bunch of things.
Mm.
They implemented a flat tax rate to encourage investment,
Okay.
privatized a lot of the state-owned enterprises,
Right.
and really focused on deregulation to make things more business-friendly. It was tough at first,
Yeah.
but it helped them heal faster in the long run.
Interesting. So, they went all in on the free market thing, but they also seemed to get that they needed social safety nets. The podcast we're looking at mentions how they've kept strong public services, like healthcare, education, social security.
Yeah.
That's going to be pretty important, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's one big difference between what Poland did and what Russia tried to do with similar reforms,
Yeah.
which, as we know, didn't work out so well for Russia. Poland got that a stable society needs a safety net, to kind of soften the blow of big economic changes.
Makes sense. And the results, you can't deny them. Their GDP has grown something like over 800% since '89.
It's insane.
That's just amazing.
Yeah, it is. But it's not just about growth for growth's sake. It's about how that growth is shared, right?
Right.
And Poland has done a pretty good job at keeping inequality relatively low compared to, a lot of other countries.
So it's not just a few people at the top getting richer, the whole country's seeing the benefits.
Exactly.
That's really important, especially, for someone who might be looking at Poland as a place to invest.
For sure. Now, let's dive a bit deeper into what's driving this economic boom. So their GDP, it's mostly dominated by the service sector.
Okay.
Then you've got industry, and agriculture plays a pretty small role.
How does that, that structure, how does that help them be successful?
Well, it's a big part of why they're so resilient.
Okay.
Remember the 2008 financial crisis?
Oh.
While a lot of Europe was struggling, Poland was the only one with stable growth.
Wow.
This diversified economy let them ride out that storm, basically.
It's kind of crazy to me that Poland was able to attract companies like Google
Yeah.
while also keeping those strong social safety nets. Some people say you can't have both.
Right.
What's Poland doing that's so different?
They're creating an environment that's good for business, but also socially responsible.
Okay.
They're putting money into education, skilled labor, so they have a workforce that can compete globally.
Yeah.
They're not just banking on cheap labor. They're going after high-skilled talent.
Sure.
They're on their way to becoming an engineering hub.
So they're trying to sidestep that whole middle income trap thing where developing economies, they get stuck because they can't compete on low wages anymore,
Yeah.
but they haven't built up the high-tech industries to move up the value chain.
Right? They're playing the long game here, focusing on sustainable growth and investing in their people. That's crucial for any country that wants long-term success.
Couldn't agree more. It all sounds, super promising. But the podcast also brings up some potential problems, like this idea of a golden cage.
Right.
They rely a lot on the European Union for trade and investment, but those markets are slowing down.
Yeah.
Could that hold them back?
It's a tricky situation, and this is where it gets interesting for you as a potential investor, right?
Yeah.
Joining the EU was huge for their initial growth, no doubt.
Yeah.
It gave them access to markets, funding, investment, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
But now, that reliance could turn into a weakness.
So are they trapped? What are the arguments for and against, getting even deeper into the EU?
Right.
Would it be better for them to, diversify their economic relationships?
Those are the million-dollar questions.
Right.
And honest, those are at the heart of a debate going on in Poland right now.
Oh, really?
Some people say staying tight with the EU offers stability and access to valuable resources.
Mm-hmm.
Others think it limits their freedom to make their own choices and compete on a global level.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, it's complex. There are no easy answers.
That makes sense. It's like they're trying to walk this tightrope between, the good stuff they get from the EU and wanting more independence.
Exactly. And to make this balancing act even trickier, there's another factor.
Okay, what's that?
Their incredible economic progress has also been fueling their military ambitions. They're now spending a whopping 5% of their GDP on defense.
Whoa.
More than any other NATO member.
Wow, that's a serious commitment. Why are they focusing so much on military power?
Well, if you look back at their history and where they are geopolitically, it makes sense. I mean, they're right between Germany and Russia.
Yeah.
Two countries that have invaded and occupied them over and over again.
Right.
And with the war in Ukraine going on,
Yeah.
that feeling of being vulnerable is even stronger.
So they're not taking any chances. They're beefing up their defenses to, scare off potential attackers.
Exactly. And they're not just throwing money at weapons. They're building up a whole defense industry.
Interesting.
They've created what they call Aviation Valley, which has become like a center for military production and research.
Wow.
Attracting aerospace companies from all over.
Sounds like they're aiming to become a major military power in Europe.
They are.
What does that mean for the rest of the continent?
It changes everything.
Yeah.
Think about it. Poland's growing military, combined with their booming economy,
Yeah.
it's shifting the balance of power in Europe. This is huge. And as someone interested in global trends, you should be paying attention to this.
For sure. But this military buildup has got to come with a price tag, right? What about their debt?
Yeah.
The podcast mentions that it's becoming a worry.
It is. All this spending on defense is adding to their debt, no question.
Yeah.
But we have to put their debt into context.
Okay, so how does their debt compare to other European countries?
Right.
Is it like a red flag?
Well, their debt to GDP ratio is actually lower than countries like Italy, Greece, and Spain.
Yeah.
And debt isn't always a bad thing.
Yeah. Sure.
It depends on what it's used for.
Right. If they're investing it wisely in like infrastructure or education, it could actually help them grow even more in the future.
Exactly. But yeah, it's something to keep an eye on. If their debt gets out of hand, it could really hurt their progress and make it harder for them to reach their goals.
Gotcha. So we've got this pretty complex picture developing here. Poland's going through this massive economic boom.
Yeah.
They're building up their military, but they're also facing some big challenges like managing their debt, figuring out their relationship with the EU. It's a lot to take in.
It is. But it's such an interesting story, and it has such huge implications for the future of Europe. And for you, someone trying to understand the forces shaping the world, well, it's a story you can't afford to ignore.
No doubt about it.
And it doesn't stop there. There are also some deep societal divisions in Poland, kind of tension between progressive and conservative groups.
Right. The podcast mentioned that too. How could those divisions affect their ability to keep moving forward,
Yeah.
Especially with them trying to balance that tricky relationship with the EU while also becoming a military power. It seems like a lot to handle at once.
It is. It reminds us that even the most impressive economic changes don't happen in a bubble. So Poland has this growing progressive movement that's pushing for, greater social liberalization, but they also have a really strong conservative base, like deeply rooted in traditional values.
I can see that. I imagine issues like LGBTQ plus rights and immigration are especially controversial.
Exactly. How Poland handles these issues will have a big impact on how unified they are as a society and also how they're seen internationally.
So it's not just about economic growth and military power. It's also about figuring out how to bridge these internal divides and create a society that's both prosperous and inclusive.
Exactly. And to add another layer of complexity, there's the whole issue of the Ukrainian refugees.
Oh, right. With the war in Ukraine still going on, Poland has taken in over 1.6 million refugees.
It's incredible.
That's amazing, but it must put a strain on their resources.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of these refugees are elderly or young kids needing healthcare, education, social support.
Yeah.
It's a massive task, but it also says a lot about Poland's compassion and willingness to help out in a crisis.
It does. But how are they managing this huge influx of people while also dealing with all these other challenges? It's a lot to juggle.
It is, but it's also an opportunity, right? Think about it. Poland is showing its strength and resilience on so many levels. It's a country that's not only transforming itself, but also playing a crucial role in helping its neighbors and shaping what's happening in the region.
That's a good point. So we've got this incredibly complicated picture emerging. Poland's rapid economic growth, their military ambitions, the societal divisions, how they're handling the refugee crisis, their evolving relationship with the EU. It's a lot to process.
It is. But it's these complexities that make Poland such a fascinating case study. We're seeing a country that's defying expectations and, like, rewriting the rule book.
It's truly remarkable. But how does all of this tie back to our original question? Can Poland actually become a superpower in Europe?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's no easy answer. Poland definitely has the potential. They've got the economic momentum, the military ambition, the national spirit. But their future depends on how they navigate all these complexities.
So what are the key things that will determine whether they succeed or fail?
Well, first off, they have to manage their debt carefully. If it gets out of control, it could really hurt their economic progress. Secondly, they need to find a way to bridge those societal divisions. If they get worse, it could cause instability and undermine their unity. And third, they have to manage their relationship with the EU really carefully.
Yeah, being too dependent on the EU could limit how much they can grow, but breaking away from it completely could also have bad consequences. It's a tough balancing act.
Exactly. Yeah. And all of this is happening while the war in Ukraine is going on, which has completely changed the geopolitical situation in Europe.
That's true. The war has made Poland feel more vulnerable, but it's also given them a bigger role on the world stage.
Right.
They're seen as like a frontline state against Russian aggression, a key player in NATO.
Exactly. Their willingness to stand up to Putin has earned them a lot of respect within NATO, and it's given them more influence in shaping European security policy.
So, in a way, the war has both sped up Poland's rise and made their path even riskier.
That's a great way to put it. They're at a crossroads, facing both incredible opportunities and really tough challenges. How they respond will not only determine their own future, but also the future of Europe.
This is all incredibly insightful, but what about their relationship with Germany? The podcast we're talking about was called Germany's Decline, like it's suggesting that Poland is rising as Germany falls. Is that really what's happening?
That's an interesting question. Germany has been the top dog in Europe, economically and politically, for a long time.
Yeah.
But now they're facing their own problems. An aging population, slow growth, and their dependence on Russian energy, which, well, we know how that turned out.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Poland is catching up, becoming a magnet for investment, innovation, military power. It's almost like the student is becoming the teacher. It's definitely something to watch. Will it lead to friction and competition, or will they find ways to work together to build a stronger Europe? A lot depends on how they handle this power shift.
It's like we're seeing the tectonic plates of Europe moving right in front of us, and the aftershocks will be felt for years to come.
Exactly. And for you, as someone who's trying to understand what's shaping the world, it's crucial to pay attention to these changes. We're talking about a potential power shift in Europe, with all the economic, political, and military consequences that come with it.
It's a reminder that the world is constantly in flux. Old assumptions can be flipped on their head, and new power dynamics can appear overnight.
Absolutely. And Poland's story is a perfect example of that. They've gone from being an afterthought to a nation that demands attention, a nation shaping the future of Europe.
So bringing it back to you, our listener, what does this mean for you? Why should you care about Poland's rise?
Well, practically speaking, if you're in business or an investor, Poland is a potential market to explore, a source of skilled workers, maybe even a place to expand your business. But more than that, Poland's story is a reminder that the world is full of surprises. It's a reminder to stay informed, be open to new ideas, and question your assumptions.
It's a call to be more aware of what's happening globally, to understand the forces shaping the world, because those forces affect all of us, whether we realize it or not.
Exactly. And in Poland's case, the story isn't over yet. Their success isn't a sure thing. They face big challenges both at home and abroad. But their journey shows the power of human resilience, ambition, and the drive for a better future.
It's both inspiring and cautionary. It shows what's possible when a nation decides to achieve something great, but it also reminds us that progress isn't always smooth sailing. There are always obstacles, and even the biggest dreams can be derailed if we're not careful.
And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, we'd like to leave you with some things to think about.
What are your thoughts on Poland's rise? Do you think they can become a superpower, or are the challenges just too big? How might their story affect your own life, your work, your understanding of the world?
Take some time to reflect on these questions, because
Yeah.
the answers might surprise you.
So to wrap up our deep dive into Poland's rise, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. We've covered a lot, from their economic changes and military buildup to their relationship with the EU and those Ukrainian refugees.
It's been quite the journey, yeah. From a nation trying to shake off the Soviet past to a possible powerhouse in Europe.
It really shows how fast the world can change, and it makes you wonder, what's next for Poland? Where do they go from here?
Well, that's where you come in, right? We've laid out the information, looked at the trends, but now it's your turn to make sense of it all.
Imagine trying on different hats, just for a minute.
Okay, first, put on your business hat. You're a CEO wanting to expand into new markets. Does Poland's skilled workforce and growing economy sound good? Or do their political uncertainties and that reliance on the EU make you think twice?
Now, switch to your investor hat. Is Poland a risky but potentially rewarding opportunity? Their economic growth is impressive, but those geopolitical risks are real.
Last one, try on that policymaker hat. How would you deal with Poland on the global stage? Are they a valuable ally, a potential competitor, or somewhere in between?
These are the questions that world leaders are thinking about right now, and your own answers, as a listener, might surprise you. It says a lot about how far Poland has come, just the fact that they're even part of these conversations.
Their story is a great example of how the future isn't set in stone. It's shaped by the decisions countries make, the chances they take, the obstacles they overcome.
And as we've seen, Poland is making some bold moves. They're betting on themselves, investing in their people, claiming their spot in the world.
Will they make it as the next European superpower? Only time will tell. But their journey so far has lessons for anyone who's watching.
Lessons about resilience, ambition, and the power of human creativity to change fate.
So as you go about your day, think about Poland. See how their story plays out. Because it's a story that's still being written, and it could change the world as we know it.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into Poland's incredible rise. Hope you found it informative, interesting, and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand what's shaping the world around us, the better we can navigate it all and create the future we want.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.